The Budget Justice Coalition will make an oral submission to the Parliamentary Select and Standing Committees on Finance to reiterate its calls for a fiscal framework that supports the caring government envisaged in the Constitution, one that it says makes the maximum possible resources available for protecting and fulfilling fundamental human rights, including socio-economic rights. This comes after Finance Minister Tito Mboweni tabled the 2021 national budget on February 24th, which BJC describes as an austerity budget that dumps the burden of fiscal consolidation squarely on the backs of the poor while rewarding high-income earners and corporates with tax breaks. For more, we're joined by Busi Sibeko, who's the co-chair of the Budget Justice Coalition. Busi, thank you so much for your time. Take me through what you intend on, putting forward at the Parliamentary, Select and Standing Committees.
Thank you for having me here. We've actually just come from presenting in front of Parliament, and what we put forward is to ask them to reject this budget because it fundamentally regresses the progressive realization of human rights in South Africa. I mean, I'll just give you an example. In education, even in the budget, the National Treasury acknowledges that the cuts to the budget, and I quote, will reduce the number of available teachers. This, coupled with the rising number of learners, implies larger class sizes, especially in no-fee paying schools, which is expected to negatively affect learning outcomes, close quote. And so we've put it forward to say that this budget will deeply undermine human rights in South Africa and also deepen the inequality that we already see in our country, and to say really that this budget must be rejected and that alternatives must be considered for a different macroeconomic framework in itself that progresses human rights.
In your statement, you mentioned here that you had warned during the medium-term budget policy statement that the scale of proposed funding cuts, obviously in the health services, public education services, would obviously deepen the levels of poverty. Were you consulting with Treasury or engaging with Treasury regarding your concerns round about the time of the MTBPS?
I mean, the Budget Justice Coalition has been around since 2018, and we've been repeatedly since 2018 saying that government's path of fiscal consolidation or austerity, what we've been calling it, has been happening for a very long time, since 2014-15, and we've continuously participated in these forums and said to government, use alternatives, here are alternatives, here are revenue alternatives, here's a different way of thinking about the economy that will progress human rights and also give us a different outcome. And so our engagements have primarily been through the parliamentary mechanisms. And so that's for the most part how we've engaged. National Treasury has not reached out to us specifically to engage on us with the solutions we put forward. And that is something that is critical for participation. It would be, would welcome National Treasury coming to us and saying, please explain to us how you envision this wealth tax to look in practice, or asking us about anything we've put forward since 2018.
Right. One of the issues you also bring forward in your statement is that surrounding the corporate income tax rate that was brought to 27%. And of course, on the day of budget, getting feedback from business, they welcomed it. Some saying that it will help keep the, the corporate space, investment space, quite competitive because our tax rates, particularly around corporate tax, are quite high. And you, I'm assuming that are not quite happy with that cut. Please take me through the reasoning why, because I can imagine, COVID had a, detrimental effect on all businesses and they probably needed some bit of a relief.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, we do not support that cut. We believe that it reinforces the global race to the bottom. And what I mean by that is that globally, a lot of countries have been reducing corporate income tax as a way of attracting investment and so forth. But actually, a study by UNCTAD, which was done, and there are many studies that have been done on this, and the UNCTAD study between 2009 and 2019 shows that even though countries try to stimulate the economy economies with tax cuts, what actually effectively happened is that they did not attract the investment they'd anticipated. And so there's no guarantee to this. And while the social grants are being cut because we supposedly do not have the money, corporates are being given, a lower corporate income tax rate. So from a research perspective, it doesn't make sense. There's no guarantee. But also just generally the way that this budget is framed, where the poor are shouldering the burden and corporates and high income earners and wealth and the wealthy are the ones who are disproportionately benefiting, is deeply problematic in the way that it is designed as a holistic budget in itself.
Right. You mentioned as well that the Treasury should consider the introduction of a new wealth or income or corporate taxes, obviously to help address our inequality and obviously be able to, deliver the necessary services. One might ask, should we not then be advocating government to be dealing with the corruption issue? Because it seems as though we can pay as many taxes as we like and SARS can collect to its heart's content. But if there are leakages in the social contract between ourselves as citizens, SARS and government, then we might not be, making the strides that we want to make.
Absolutely. I think corruption remains a critical issue that must be addressed. But I think fundamentally when we ask, there's a tendency to conflate these issues, right? And National Treasury has decided, for instance, that we're going to take away money where it is not being spent in the correct way. But what does that do? It punishes the people who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of those basic services for having a local government or provincial government that is unable to deliver. So fundamentally, we need to ask ourselves, what is the problem we're trying to solve? If it is corruption, it requires a particular set of responses to be able to deal with it in a horizontal and vertical way. And so cutting money effectively deprives the people on the ground. They still need that road. Taking away that money does not mean that they'll get that road. And we need to think differently about what solutions need to respond to what problems in South Africa.
Right. Busi, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That is Busi Sibeko, who is the co-chair of the Budget Justice Coalition. We're going to take a short break. We'll have more of your news afterwards.